Welcome to Mercy Hill Productions YouTube channel. I'm Andy, the production assistant. Our mission is to make disciples and multiply churches. To support the mission, we have created this YouTube channel to share some of what we know about technology and ministry. Join our community, leave a comment, or send us a message. Whether you're a first-time viewer or a long-time subscriber, we're excited to have you join us. Now let's get right to it.
All right, so here's the situation for this week, and hopefully this tutorial is brief, concise, and to the point, because the whole goal of it is for us to streamline a process that nobody ever really wants to have to go through. This is a situation where maybe we have a service edit that needs to happen, and that service edit needs to be placed onto the KiPro drive so it can go to our campuses. This may also happen if, let's say, the pastor pre-recorded a sermon maybe a week in advance because we knew he'd be out of town. An edit needs to happen, and then that edit would then be placed onto the KiPro drives to go to our campuses. So that's kind of the use case of something like this. It is something we've only had to deal with once or twice in the last couple of years, but being that we've done it more than once, it's worth documenting a process in order for us to repeat this thing in the future. So hopefully that explains what the reason for this process is. Now let's get into the nuts and bolts of how it works. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to take all of our assets that we have from whatever recording it is, live recording or pre-recording, whatever, and we are going to edit those in our video editor. You might use Premiere or DaVinci Resolve, or you might use Final Cut. I personally use Final Cut. Ultimately, once you have edited your full service, we're going to go ahead and export that thing out in ProRes format. Now, ProRes is something that's mostly uncompressed, and it is a codec that is very familiar to the Mac, and it runs natively on the Mac. And so it's important to use ProRes because our playback into the KiPros is going to come from the Mac through SDI into the KiPros, and we need it to be delivered without any frame drops, without any lip sync issues, and ProRes is going to give us the ability to do that most efficiently. Now you can compress a file in order to shrink the file size, but the compressed file actually is tougher for the computer to play back because there's processing involved, whereas with ProRes, being that it's totally native, it'll play back at full rate with very little overhead on the computer. So, all right, so let's get to how this works. On the iMac in the production booth, we're going to open up an application called Blackmagic Media Express. This is a very basic media player, but it allows for us to play back the media through the DeckLink card, which is our SDI outputs from this computer. And in this particular case, we're going to choose a specific DeckLink port, and you can see it here in the picture. Now, once we have the media into this Media Express player, if we were to hit play, it's sending that audio and video directly out through the SDI channel that we have chosen, but we need to send that channel to a specific KiPro player. So let me show you how we're doing that. Okay, so specifically here at Regional, we have the multiple KiPro units. We are feeding our SDI signal out of the DeckLink box directly into this lower right-hand side KiPro unit. So we would call that KiPro Ultra number 4. And you can see currently I'm doing a playback and a recording, so they are all recording at the same time. But the key is, if we were to put our video into this unit automatically feeds a distribution that sends it out to all the others. And so we really only need to feed one unit in order for all of them to receive the video signal. So let me show you on the backside where we're making that connection. Okay, mind the mess, I'm sorry, but we have a mess of cables. That KiPro Ultra 4 is on this rack here on the far left. So if you come down one layer in the far left, and the port we're looking for is the one that's labeled, that's actually not blood on my finger, by the way, that's marker. It's marker because I marked this one cable with a piece of tape. It's marked REC space ALT as far as recording alternative. So that SDI port 1, input 1, is where we need to plug that in. And that cable is actually going to be always connected to the second port down from this DeckLink drive. So basically we're coming out of the DeckLink into SDI 1 on the back of this unit here. Now there was a cable plugged into that port, which we need to make sure we pay attention to this, because this does need to go back when this is all done. But this port we'll just leave right here to make it easy for us to access when all the recording is done, so that we can reverse the hardware change that we made. So ultimately this will go back into SDI1 when we're all said and done. Now those connections are just part of the job. We also need to make a configuration change within the KiPro menus. So while the KiPro is stopped and nothing is happening with it, you can hit the config button, and you want to go to this menu that we see here in the screen grab, and you want to select the audio as an SDI input. In normal cases where we would use the KiPro for our services, the audio is usually selected into the analog option, because we're bringing inputs, like 8 inputs in from our soundboard. But for this particular case, we need the audio to patch through from our SDI cable. So make sure you make that adjustment in the configuration. At the end, we'll cover just a reminder, you need to put it back to analog when we are finished with this recording capture. Okay, so now that we've got the drive or the player set up, we've got the cables connected, we have our media player on the computer ready to play back. We need to insert clean or empty KiPro drives into each of the 4 units, format those drives, and make sure the time code is set to 0, so we all have a fresh starting point. Once you've done that, go ahead and hit record on all 4 of the KiPro drives. Hit them at the same time, or you can use the Stream Deck. There's a record button on there that'll trigger those to go all at the same time. Either way, ideally, we want them to start at the same, so that way every campus has the similar starting point. Once you've started recording on those drives, you can hit play on the media player and just let it roll. Typically, I leave in my edit a pre-roll of about 10 seconds that's just blank. That gives a chance for the drives to start rolling. I can see if there's any errors on the drive within that 10 seconds. Usually the KiPros will tell you if there's frame drops. And so basically that 10-second pre-roll, and then it goes right into the sermon. In this case, it's a sermon. It might be something else depending on your use. But so then we play through the sermon. It's going to play back in real time. So if this was a 40-minute sermon, we got to be here for 40 minutes waiting for it. And I generally have headphones with me, and I'll plug those in and monitor channels 1 and 2 for audio to make sure the audio is actually coming into the drives and that it's clean. I'll also usually watch the screen closely, because you want the lip sync to be solid. That's something that by the end of a sermon, if we have any dropped frames, 1 frame drop at the very beginning of the sermon can actually result in enough of a lip sync issue near the end that it's super noticeable that the audio is just off, and we don't want that at all. So let it play all the way out. When I do the edit, I usually leave like a 10 or 20 second just blank space at the end. And so I'll let the KiPros continue to record out for a little while after the total sermon, just so that way there's like this off ramp in case at the campuses they need that extra off ramp. So, all right, so let's say we've finished the recording. Next steps is we just need to restore everything back to the way it was. So eject all your KiPro drives. You can even power off most of the KiPros except for the one that we did the recording on, but you could also do all that later. Ultimately, the next step is go around the backside where I showed you that SDI cable that we had made a change to. Unplug the one that's coming from the deck link, the special alt recording cable. Unplug that guy, plug in the original SDI cable back to the input to make sure that's locked in and ready to go for future recordings. Then you can come back around to the front on the config menu. We want to jump back into the config, find the audio input, and switch it back to analog. Again, this is something we talked about earlier, but we need to make sure it's done so that way recordings at our next service can happen without any trouble. Then as far as on the computer goes, you can just close down the Media Express and delete the file, I guess, if you want to. It's massive, so it would probably be good to go ahead and delete it out of whatever location it's in and empty it from the trash, just so we can clean up some space. If you wanted to wait until like a following week to do the trash emptying thing, that would be fine too, just to make sure that the weekend is covered. One last thing that I like to always do as well is I export a compressed version of the video, something that's not going to take up a ton of space, and it can be included in our ProPresenter exports for the campuses. That 3 to 6 gigabyte compressed version of the sermon, we're going to go ahead and leave that in a folder on OneDrive, so that if the campuses have trouble with the playback from the KiPro, which is like pretty much 0% chance that will ever happen, but if it does, you could play back the compressed version from ProPresenter there's just a high likelihood of jitter, skipping, lip sync issues, and so on, which is why we try to do this new alternative to recording, playing back from KiPros. So if you have questions, leave comments, give me a call, however you guys want to contact me. I'm happy to answer questions on this because I want to make sure this process is easy to follow and that there's no questions about it in the future in case there's a need for this to happen in a time when I'm not able to manage it. So thank you for your help, and I hope you have a good rest of your day.
Thank you for watching. We hope you found our content inspiring and helpful. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe to our channel to stay up to date on our latest videos. We'd love to hear from you, so be sure to connect with us in the comments and let us know how we can serve you better. Remember, at Mercy Hill, we're committed to making disciples and multiplying churches. So take what you've learned and make a difference. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you in the next video.